afternoon, and this is Maggie Rose, and this is the New Concord Hour, being brought to you proudly by the Microeffect Radio Broadcasting Network out of Idaho. And I am your host, Maggie Rose, and today is April the 28th, 2016. We only have a couple more days to go, folks, until we are at the end of the month. As they say, April showers bring May flowers, and we've been getting lots of rain in California, Oregon, and Washington and the great Northwest. The sun is out bright and shiny today. There's a slight breeze going on here. I don't know what the weather's like for you back east or back in the Midwest, but we're getting a little bit of warming weather here, but there has been a slight breeze going on. We have noticed that there are some problems with the honeybees going on. The problem is getting worse than I even imagined. I've been talking to some of the beekeepers out there, and they're stating to me is that with the pesticides and Monsanto and the crap that they've been pulling, and also with those killer bees coming up from South America that accidentally or deliberately got released into the populace and made it into California and across the United States line as illegal aliens, as we might call them, that they've been also killing off some of the honeybees. So the honeybees are under attack, and as you all know, that this can really bring a great deal of harm to our produce. No wonder many of our trees nowadays do not seem to pollinate. We don't get the pears and the apples and the other things we used to get, even when we've taken a couple trees of the same kind and planted them near each other. Because of the weather changes and the weather patterns that have been going on across the U.S., partially due to, they want to say weather change. I think a lot of it has to do with man-made alterations of the weather. I believe it has a lot to do with the HAARP. You can look up HAARP. A lot of people have not even heard about HAARP. You need to read up on that. And you'll find out exactly what has been going on, where they are able to actually create feast and famine in those particular countries, depending upon if they've been behaving themselves under the New World Order, the Cabal, or the United Nations or not. But obviously the honeybees are in great distress. They're under attack. I was over at our farm co-op the other day, and I noticed a bunch of wine caskets or wine barrels that are used for planters, and they were sitting on top of each other. And while I was standing there, I noticed a whole bunch of honeybees, and there was a white box that was set there. And I guess what happened was the mother queen bee had decided she liked whatever it was about those empty wine barrels that had been cut in half to turn into planters, and she had planted herself there. And the rest of her crew came with her. And, of course, they knew that they couldn't have those there with people trying to make purchases. They contacted a honeybee curator, and he came in with his white box with special attractant that is inside the box. And now Queen Bee has transferred from the wine barrels or the planter boxes over to the beehive. And all the other bees are starting to enter into it. And in a matter of a couple days, they're going to gather that up and transport Mother Queen Bee and her flock to the rest of her hive to another location away from people that are trying to make purchases at the store there. So, anyway, I want to thank those people that are in the chat room right now. We have Aerospaceman, Betty Boop, Bonnie, Cy, Evangel, Hardway, 9099 and Hugh, as well as Joe and Mr. Virtue and Not Dead Yet. So one of the things that, Evangel just said that Nick Beckick, Begich, I'm probably not pronouncing that right, wrote a good book called Angels Don't Play This Harp, HAARP. And Nick Beckick, is it Begich? Thank you for that, Evangel. I heard about the book. I just didn't know who the author was, so that will help us now for those people that want to go to their used bookstore or go to Amazon or other places like Barnes & Noble and try to find that book to read it. I was looking in here on the chat room, and I was reading some of the chat that was going on in there, and Mr. Virtue was talking about the U.S. citizen and the law-abiding U.S. national. And Not Yet Dead said moral and criminal dangers mostly. So, folks, one of the things that many people have been sharing with me is the confusion between what is a national citizen and what is a U.S. citizen. And I consider myself as an American national, but of course, as not dead yet said, as far as the IRS is concerned, a non-resident alien, quote, is not engaged in a trade or business. So, folks, what you possibly can do is look up under the IRS code and look up under what constitutes a U.S. citizen versus a national versus an alien versus a legal alien, and see what the difference is. And some of these people have been talking about common law, have been talking about the citizen with a small c versus citizen with a capital C, versus the fact that everything that we may get, whether it's a traffic ticket or our driver's license or any kind of legal paperwork that we receive, everything's done in capital. Folks, that's bringing us basically into their administrative or their admiralty courts or into their statutory courts. And, of course, as we all know, the lawyers and the judges, since at least right after the Civil War, have managed to bring everything under what they call their admin law, their admiralty law, or under their statutory law. And they just kind of poo-poo the whole idea of common law. It's rarely ever mentioned, I understand, in law school. You might have a small course in the Constitution, and then you really never hear about it again. And, of course, all these people that put themselves through law school and have acquired these huge legal student debts know that they have to play along to get along, or they won't be able to practice law. Therefore, they will not be able to pay off their legal debts, their student loans, and therefore they may not be able to keep that mortgage, or maybe even not even keep that marriage. So, folks, it's just a vicious cycle that they've sucked us into over the last 150-plus years, and they're continuing to suck us into that. I did want to let you all know that I have an appointment at 3 o'clock, and I live quite a ways outside of my hometown. So I will be ending the show today at 2:45 Pacific Standard Time. That's at 2:45, or for those of you back 15:45 this afternoon. And Shelby, the board engineer, is aware of this, and she will be getting ready to prime in the music at a few minutes before 2:45, so I can make it to my appointment on time. That I have been kind of going over, and I know that Gary Hunt has been sending me a lot of information that he's been writing on his blogs. He has been keeping us apprised of what is going on in as far as his Burns Chronicle. Before I go there, I want to answer a question to Valerie. Valerie sent me a question, and her question was regarding, which is Daughters of the American Revolution. Now, folks, Daughters of the American Revolution and Sons of the American Revolution are really wonderful, wonderful organizations to become members of. It's an honor and a privilege to do so. If you have had one member in your family, whether you're a male or female, that was in the Revolutionary War, that was acknowledged as being in the Revolutionary War, fighting for the cause, then you have the ability to join the Daughters of the American Revolution or the Sons of the American Revolution. And to give you a little bit of a background, what it takes, then you will fully appreciate my chagrin and my serious concern about what happened to me after I went through this process because of what my politics were. Folks, as many of you all know, that many of us out there, in order to be able to vote in the primary or the secondary main general election, we have to register to vote. And there's many reasons for doing this. It's to keep us from not voting twice. It's to keep everything supposedly legitimate. But we all know the Electoral College is broke. We all know that the powers may be have already picked who their president's going to be, and they do whatever it takes to finagle the votes or play shenanigans back there, especially on the East Coast. And then they start calling the election long before the people on the West Coast have had their polls closed. So a lot of people that would normally go to vote between 6 and 8 o'clock Pacific Standard even bother to go to the polls because they're already trying to announce it over the national media long before 7 or 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So that's one thing I wish we could change. That would be a main thing. Another thing is many of us out out there. There's people that are libertarians. There are people that are independents. They like a little bit of the Democrat Party, a little bit of the Republican Party, but we have to register for one or the other. You can register as a libertarian, you can register as an independent, or as a conservative, or even a Green Party if you want, but then you generally can't vote in the primary election that takes place in the spring for those that you would normally want to vote for to get them into the general election or to the secondary election. So for many people out there that are independent like myself, that slide more towards conservatism and a little bit of republicanism, many of us are fed up with the Republican Party, the GOP right now, and we're absolutely thoroughly disgusted with the Democrat Party. But we are forced to register one or the other, and so I am being a conservative in many ways and being an independent, a free thinker, independent free mind. I did not vote for the Democrat Party. I have seen some good people that have said that they subscribe to the Democrat Party, but we don't necessarily see eye to eye about all major issues that always seem to be out there on the table. And what happened when I started my journey into the Daughters of the American Revolution was this. I contacted the Daughters of the American Revolution. I showed an interest. They gave me a homework assignment. And that homework assignment was basically that I had to get every birth certificate, marriage certificate, even divorce certificates going all the way back to the American Revolution, back to where I suspected my great-great-grandfather, who his name was Vachel Hinton. He fought in the Revolutionary War as a private in the Virginia militia. Now, where I had it confirmed was I found a cousin who was my great-grandfather's sister's great-granddaughter. And she was able to present to me a cousin who was the granddaughter of my great-grandfather's sister. From that information she gave me, I found a whole new family back in Kentucky. And these people are in a place called Flemingsburg, Kentucky. And they are part of the Hinton family. And once I was able to answer some of their questions, and they were able to answer some of my questions, it turned out that we were all distant cousins, like 3, 4, and 5 times removed. That we all shared the same great-great-great-grandfather 4 times, and that his father was our 5 times great-grandfather who fought the Revolutionary War. So I took one of my 4 sons, and we flew back there, and every couple of years they have a family reunion. And at that family reunion, I met a lot of these people and learned more about the family history and went to see where my great-grandfather, Vachel Hinton, had been buried under the freeway. The cemetery back in the 1930s ran from Maysville, Kentucky, to where George Clooney's mother, Rosemary Clooney, had her start. So I was actually in Maysville. And the freeway is a little 2-lane freeway, and it runs all the way from Maysville all the way to Flemingsburg. And they decided not to remove any of the cemetery, just basically to scrape over the top of it. So under this little 2-lane road, just as you enter into Flemingsburg, is my 5 times great-great-great-great-grandfather, Vachel Hinton. And he was married the first time and had like 10 or 11 children. She passed away, and then he married Nancy Roy, who was a widow herself with a few sons, and they got married. And as a result of my great-grandfather Vachel marrying Nancy Roy, R-O-Y, they had 3 more children. They had 2 boys and they had a girl. And one of those boys was Hezekiah. Now, Hezekiah and my great-grandmother, his wife, he's my 4th-time great-grandfather, are actually buried in the Flemingsburg Cemetery. So I was actually to go up there and able to see where they were buried and also to see the memorial that was placed in honor of my great-grandfather, Private Vachel Hinton of the Virginia Militia, and be able to stand at the top of the cemetery and look down on the little 2-lane country freeway, as they call it, and know that right down there, somewhere between 2 of the corners there, he's buried under that road. Well, once I was able to go and get some help from my cousins to get his marriage certificate to Nancy Roy and the actual marriage certificate between their son Hezekiah and his wife, and then work backwards, I was able to get the information that I needed in order to be able to find out who some of these other relatives were, to find out that they had a daughter, and that this daughter was born there in Flemingsburg, and that after they had her, she was raised. She married a guy by the name of John Anthony Davis. Now, John Anthony Davis was fighting in the Civil War, and when he and Sally Ann Hinton moved up to Nebraska and Indiana is when war broke out, and he ended up fighting for the Union, and she lost all contact with her family in the South. Now, half of the Hintons were fighting for industrialization, and the other half was against industrialization of the South, and half of them were for slaves and owned slaves, and the other half were against slaves. In fact, when I went to church with my Hinton, Kentucky family, they pointed to me that side of the road is where the Civil War started as far as the Hintons were concerned, and that everybody on that side of the church was for the Union, and everybody on this side of the church was for the Confederacy. So it really made history come alive for me. From getting that information, I was able to get the birth certificate of John Anthony Davis Sr. and Sally Ann Hinton, and also find out where they were buried and get their death certificates. With that information, I was able to find out who their children were, and one of their daughters was Molly. Molly ended up marrying Charles Smith, and the two of them ended up having my great-grandfather. So once I was able to get my great-grandfather's birth certificate and his marriage certificate to my great-grandmother, I was then able to find out where my grandmother was born and get those birth certificates. And then, of course, with that and my mother's birth certificate and my own birth certificate, I was able to prove the direct bloodline and lineage going from myself through my mother to my grandmother to my great-grandfather to his mother, Molly, to her mother, Sally Ann Hinton, all the way to Hezekiah and his wife, and then his father, Vachel. So, folks, that's kind of what it takes to do it, and it takes a lot of time. It can take you weeks. It can take you months. Many cases, it takes years. For me, it took about 2 to 3 years to get all that information. Now, later on during your genealogy research, you can actually find out maybe that there were other relatives and family members that fought in the Revolutionary War. But as long as you have one that you can prove, you are eligible for either the Sons of the American Revolution or the Daughters of the American Revolution. Now, folks, after all that, you fill out your application. You make copies and certified copies of these documents. You have the secretary of your chapter that authenticates all this, and then you send out your fee. Well, all that was done, and it was all ready to go. And then I did the horrible, grievous sin that cost me being able to be a member of this particular chapter. We had a county commissioner that did not believe politically the way many of us believe. And he was very arrogant and very disrespectful and had done some things that you would consider for a county commissioner to do to be very unethical and very immoral. And there finally came a point one day when we all have a right, as our founding fathers showed us, they had a right to stand up and say, foul, this is wrong, this is unjust, this is not even legal, okay? And, of course, they got seriously rebuffed for it, and many of them even lost their lives and their families and livelihoods because of taking the stand that they did. Well, I don't understand why it is that our founding fathers could speak up against injustices, and through the vote, supposedly, we're supposed to be able to vote in a way that votes our conscience, right? So one day during the county commissioners meeting, this was back in 2010, I stood up during the open public is allowed to speak, and I started to speak my mind about some concerns I had before the 3 county commissioners. Now, at this time, we had an election going on, and one of the people that was running for the position of county commissioner was actually going to be running against this man that we call the incumbent. And the incumbent knew that this individual was running against him, and knew that I had just recently became the campaign manager for this gentleman that was running against the incumbent. So what does the county commissioner speak up and say? Oh, this individual, what she's doing is she's speaking up, and she's only saying this because she's angry because she is actually the new campaign manager for the person running against me who's already sitting here in the seat as a county commissioner. and he started to bash me right there in front of everybody. And, folks, for the first time in my life, I really lost it. I lost my cool. I was very angry. I didn't do any swearing or cussing, but I let him know in no certain terms that he was unethical, immoral, and did not deserve to be in that seat, and that he had violated even his oath as a veteran, a military veteran who was a member of an organization that I was a member of. And basically I let him know that what he had been doing even through that organization's national bylaws was illegal. Well, unfortunately, he knew people in high places, and he decided he was going to set out to destroy me for daring to speak the truth in a public forum during the time when the public has 3 minutes to speak their mind or bring up, redress their grievances against the county commissioners and what they're doing to the people. And so, as it turned out, his wife was a member of the Democrat Party, and she went to all of her friends, who were mostly members of the Democrat Party, and a lot of them happened to be members of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And the next thing I knew is I was told that the people there had decided to take a vote, and I wasn't going to be able to join this particular chapter. So they considered that, I was so outspoken and that I, had spoken my mind and brought up some true facts that should be concerns to everybody in this county. But how dare I? They didn't want somebody like that who basically, they want someone, I guess, who will put up and shut up, play along to get along, and just go with the flow even if it's wrong. Well, that's not me, folks. That's just not Maggie Rose. And so, unfortunately, a wonderful organization that I absolutely support happens to have a chapter that maybe they don't practice what they preach. They talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. Now, folks, it doesn't matter what county this was or what state this was in. All that matters is the fact is that we do have organizations out there. We have churches out there that don't always preach, and we're aware of that fact. We are very aware of the fact that we have ministers out there that maybe should not be speaking from the pulpit. We've seen many times over the years where there have been organizations that say one thing and do something else. One of the things they say, you don't judge others. Lest ye be judged, right? How many times have we heard that? We have no right to judge. The person should judge themselves or let God, their creator, their source, be the one to judge them. But we should not be the one doing the judging. We without sin can cast the first stone. Isn't that what Jesus Christ said? We without sin can cast the first stone. Well, folks, I had a friend one time that was a member of a very conservative church that has its foundations in the southern states, the Southern Protestant Church. And these people here were approached by her many times that her husband was drinking and abusing her, physically beating her up. She couldn't get him any help. The church wasn't standing behind her. And finally, when she couldn't get any help, she knew that it was or his, and so she divorced him. The minute she divorced him, the church excommunicated her. Now, what they should have been was loving, caring, supportive, and tried to find ways to help make her stronger. But telling her that she should stay with him no matter what, and that she just needs to keep praying for him, and they will keep praying for him. Folks, I don't know why, if they were doing any praying, I don't know why the prayers weren't working. I don't know what the problem was. But when she knew that she had to leave him because it could end up costing her life, why would a church excommunicate a member of their flock? These loving, caring Christians. I don't understand it. Well, folks, I am not going to hold, because of one chapter of one organization, to say that any other organization at a national or state level is guilty. Is above. So, folks, said and done, my application is still standing by. I haven't turned it back into a different chapter. I just have been too busy with other. So, I've been busy trying to fight for this Constitution, for our country, for due process, like what happened in Grants Pass, Oregon last spring. I did not go to Montana, but I was supporting many of what they were trying to do there. I was supporting much of what was happening in Harney County. I may not have gone about doing some things that they did themselves the way they did it, but, I don't believe in killing the messenger. And I believe that the message is important that we listen to. So with that all said and done, we're going to go to a station break. We're going to come back for another 15 minutes at the other side of the hour. And then I will be talking to you guys again next Tuesday. This is Maggie Rose, and we're going to go to station break. Please patronize our sponsors. Thank you very much. Woo! Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Folks, this is Maggie Rose, and I'm back with you. The time is 2:36 p.m. on April the 28th, and this is going to be a little bit of a shorter show today because I've got a doctor appointment to go to at 3 o'clock because life does go on, and I could not change it. But one surf just came up on the chat room a few minutes ago. He and I were supposed to link up when I was in California, and that did not happen. It will happen sometime in the very near future. But his question was, do we have any updates on what is going on with the Bundys? And yes, we do with Ammon Bundy. I received a notice from Shirley, Liberty Cheryl. She's in Nevada, and she decided to let everybody know to post on Facebook to make calls to Oregon to help our fellow men jailed there. Now, I'm going to read to you what she sent me, and then if you all want me to send it to you, send me an email. I know it's kind of a long email, but I did that so I cannot be so easily hacked into, being that Hotmail and Yahoo have been getting hacked into a lot lately. So my email address is a little bit long, but it should be really easy to remember. You can also find it on the website here on the Microfact. That email address is all lowercase, and it's the, T-H-E, new, N-E-W, Concord, C-O-N-C-O-R-D, our, H-O-U-R, with, W-I-T-H, Maggie, M-A-G-G-I-E, at hotmail.com. Again, that's the New Concord Hour, with Maggie, M-A-G-G-I-E, at hotmail.com, and I will forward on to you what Liberty Cheryl sent to me, but I'm going to read you a little portion of it right now. Folks, I received an email the other day from Stephen, and Stephen wrote, Dear Maggie Rose, I went up on YouTube to try to find out if there was anything on you, if there was a website where I could find you on, and all of a sudden staring at me was this blonde-haired chick that she looked like she was too young to have been in the military for 41 years. Surely that's not you, right? And if it is, looking good, babe. Well, folks, thank you very much. First of all, the gal that you see on the YouTube, Maggie Rose, happens to have the same first and middle name that I'm using here on my radio show, but she is a lot younger than I am, and she has blonde hair. I do not have blonde hair. They say that blondes have more fun. I don't necessarily agree with it. So anyway, that Maggie Rose and this Maggie Rose are not one and the same. But I got a good chuckle at it because I typed in the name Maggie Rose, and sure enough, here is a female singer that is becoming a real hit sensation all across the country, and she's on tour right now, I think. And so anyway, I guess I'm giving her a plug. I listened to some of her music, and it wasn't half bad. But no, the two Maggie Roses are one and not the same. She's a blonde. I am not a blonde, and we'll just leave it at that. I'm a little bit older than her, but not much. At least in my head, I know that I'm not much older than her. So here we have what was just stated here, Phil Lyman, the San Juan County Commissioner. Let me see if I can bring this up right here. This is coming from Liberty Cheryl to give us kind of an update, what is happening. I got a thumbs up from my board engineer, Shelby. Shelby, thank you for that very much. Anyway, Phil Lyman, I'm going to read this to you all. Phil Lyman, San Juan County Commissioner. Folks, get out a pen and paper if you have one right handy so you can take down some phone numbers. If not, then just send an email to the New Concord Hour with Maggie at hotmail.com, and I'll send this on to you. Phil Lyman, San Juan County Commissioner, is being housed in the maximum security section of the jail. Again, Phil Lyman, L-Y-M-A-N, San Juan County Commissioner is being housed in the maximum security section of the jail. I guess he's another one of our political prisoners. Ammon Bundy, Ryan Bundy, and the guys were transported back to Oregon today, and when they arrive, they find out that all their belongings are somehow lost. So, folks, Ammon Bundy, Ryan Bundy, and all the rest of the guys were transported back to Oregon to Portland on Tuesday. Today's Thursday, so they've been there 2 days now. and they found out that all of their belongings got somehow lost. Their paperwork, their case notes, their legal paperwork, everything that they needed for themselves. And, oh, by the way, folks, guess what? According to Liberty Sherrill, and I've got this confirmed by the Bundy family, they're all back in solitary confinement. Now, why is that? Please call the Portland jail and let them know this is not acceptable treatment of our fellow Americans who have not even been tried for their so-called crimes yet. Again, please call the Portland jail and let them know this is not acceptable treatment of our fellow Americans, to put them in solitary confinement and then steal all of their court paperwork, all their case, CASE notes, NOTES, everything that they needed. You may call these phone numbers. In Oregon, the Multnomah County Jail, that's Multnomah, Multnomah County Jail, is 503-988-5060, then press 0. That's 503-988-5060, then press 0. Call the Oregon County Sheriff Daniel Staton. That's Staton, Daniel Staton. Staton. He's there at the county jail. 503-243-7600. 503-243-7600. And while you're at it, call Judge Anna Brown, Camber, Camber room. Call Judge Anna Brown's Camber room. Judge Anna Brown is the one been hearing their case there. It's the Camber room, Camber. The phone number is 503-326-8350. That's 503-326-8350. Oregon Governor Kate Brown, 503-378-4582. Again, Governor Kate Brown, 503-378-4582. And while you're at it, call the Oregon Attorney General, Ellen Rosenblum. Oregon Attorney General, Ellen, Rosenblum, 503-378-4400. That's 503-378-4400. Or email the U.S. Attorney General at Bill, Bill.Williams, Williams, at USDOJ.gov. That's Bill.Williams with an S at USDOJ.gov. Or the Assistant U.S. District Attorney, Jeffrey, with a G, Jeffrey.Barrow, Barrow, at USDOJ.gov. And this is the guy who's in charge of coordinating with the attorneys all the belongings being picked up at the refuge. Is Jeffrey, Geoffrey.Barrow, Barrow, at USDOJ.gov. Now, folks, with that all said in mind, this is Maggie Rose. You can send me an email. I'll send that email to you with those phone numbers. If you didn't get them, I'll give you those numbers again on Tuesday. This is Maggie Rose with the New Concord Hour, being brought to you by the Microeffect Radio Broadcasting Network. You all have a good weekend, and please pray for our political prisoners. God bless you. Good night.